Stories are a lifeblood of, well, pretty much everything. And with their importance, humans have taken it upon themselves to make as many ways of telling stories as there are stars in the sky. And what glorious methods they are, be it books, video games, paintings, movies, photographs, music, radio plays, stagecraft, prints, ARGs, Morse code, graffiti, bird songs, they just all make me so excited to experience. It's often seen, however, that stories are crafted to suit their mediums, to stay within an unchanging structure. So, while yes, mediums do have their different constraints, the medium is simply another tool in the storyteller's arsenal, or at least should be seen as one. I mean, one can warp the structure, bend the seams, muddle reality. See, mediums are supposed to serve the story, to prop it up, to set the stage. So, welcome in, and get comfortable. Let's break into specifics, shall we?
It's time for the one and only Some Time of the Day show with your host, Some Axolotl. With today's topic,
Setting the stage, using mediums as tools. A general rule of thumb you'll be using is that a work's story is a narrative, the world and actions, fictional and non-fictional, conveyed by the piece, while a work's medium is the delivery method, the pieces that are used to hold the fiction. Basically, the story is what the creator wishes for their audience to engage with, while the medium is how they spread that creation. This is just a general rule of thumb. Some works purposefully blur the boundaries. We'll get into those later. So, let's start with a good baseline for this. How about oral storytelling? What's that one I hear no one saying? It's exactly what it says. It's telling a story. Orally. Humans have been doing this for ages, most likely with it being the first way stories and information were communicated as a whole. At its core, it's the simple act of conveying a topic, but even within its simplicity, the medium can be shaped to fit the story. Humans have this cool little feature, I think it's called voice, and they can modify this on the fly to fit their emotions and intentions of their speech. This combines with the teller's physical actions, be they blocked out or impromptu, to create a unique delivery for each story, be it a sweeping epic of a lost love or how your bud got blasted at the pool bar and went Don Quixote on the bar with a pool cue. This is the performance. Performance is deeply rooted in any form of storytelling, even when the result is a piece frozen and static in time. While some may argue that it is an aspect of the story, I personally believe it falls into the medium's domain, assisting with the delivery of the story. And a performance can be aimed, and a performance can be customized. See, a good performance can underscore levity, it can increase tension, it can exaggerate action. A storyteller takes this into account to communicate, even if subconsciously. Of course, this medium is inherently ephemeral, so let's apply these thoughts to its recorded siblings. Podcasts, radio shows, audio dramas, audiobooks. This medium goes by a handful of names, mostly in relation to its method of distribution. That being said, it is purely a single method, a recording, be it analog or digital, that plays back human speech to convey pretty much anything. Yes, that means Orson Welles' War of the Worlds is the same ilk as something like Magnus Archives. Stuff like Welcome to Night Vale even make use of this ambiguity, creating a frame of a fictional radio news show. A fictional radio news show for a town where horror and mystery is as mundane as the fallen leaves of autumn. Its performance is a homage to the pieces that came before it, much like War of the Worlds, and both of them utilize audience familiarity with the medium to twist expectations and play with perception, exploiting the familiarity the audience has with the genre. Both pieces play with their medium to further their stories, creating a sort of draw sourced from the very act of listening. There's a sort of calmness in all the simplicity. See, oral storytelling's framing elements are restricted to performance, namely vocal delivery and physical movement, and the pacing, while audio dramas introduce editing and casting into the mix, along with occasionally soundtrack, sound effects. They are both very low-frill mediums. So what happens when more complex mediums in terms of audience consumption come into play? I mean, what if the medium had an entire complex structure and rule set while also having an entire field dedicated to its interpretation? Let's not ramp up that quickly. Let's look at something that is, yes, more complex, but there's still a clear separation between the medium and the story. Writing is one of the more common mediums as a whole, obviously, and serves as a good case study for the use of a piece's medium to further its intended narrative. See, a written work is easy to split into the story and the medium, as the medium is, well, the physical component, while a piece's story is, well, what the physical component is conveying. A skilled author will utilize the written word to create a guide of a sort for the audience to follow in their consumption of the story. Tone, pacing, descriptions, word choice, these are all components of written work that can be shaped to convey its message. See, each line is a choice. Each word is a stroke in a greater piece. Something as small as a simple consideration on grammar, such as Cormac McCarthy's words lacking punctuation for dialogue, can have major effects on how the audience engages with a story. Now, major changes on the other hand, like Mark Z. Danielewski's House of Leaves and its loose approach to proper formatting and layout, affect engagement in a lot more blatant of a manner. The former is something a reader may overlook yet will certainly feel, while the latter is, well, it's House of Leaves. It's a bit hard to miss. Those two break fundamental laws of writing, for lack of a better term. Now, is there a way of demonstrating this concept in a manner more mundane? Let's discuss genre. Genre serves as the categorization of narratives based off their shared traits, and like all categorizations, is invented purely for human convenience. Of course, this does make it useful for our current purposes. See, genres act as a sort of living ecosystem. Tropes and styles live and die, often in waves, and the new is built on the foundation of the old. This leads to the medium being treated differently throughout the genres. One of the easiest ways of noticing this is with description. Places, people, and actions will be conveyed in text in a manner that furthers the intended feeling of a work. Let's work with a single character, for example. In a romance novel, they may be described by their attractive features. In a horror novel, their flaws. In an action novel, the accomplishments or the scars. Is this just part of the narrative, though? No. While, yes, the character is the narrative, the actual descriptions themselves are part of the medium. It's the guide on how to interpret the novel again. So, let's plunge in a bit deeper. Yes, narrative and stories are easy to identify in their written and oral forms. But what about when the medium is not traditionally associated with storytelling? I would start this by rhetorically asking if paintings and sculptures have narratives, but honestly, that one is somehow more painfully obvious than my other stupid rhetorical questions. All art has some form of a narrative, even if not readily apparent. Artistic schools all have their own unique ways of playing with the medium, with abstractism being a fantastic example for this. See, the medium and delivery are abstracted out from their core to a logical extreme, challenging the viewer to identify its intended narrative. On the other hand, one could say that some schools like non-representational art lack a narrative. The techniques used, the process, the piece itself, however, serve as the narrative in these aspects. Abstract and non-representational art both rely on their mediums being, well, warped and molded, in order to create art out of their frame of reference, creating a narrative through their techniques. I guess I should probably state that narratives can just be emotions and feelings, at least in a sense. All art relies at least on one scene, even if nonsensical. But that scene can go as far as containing a fully fledged plot, down to simply imparting the viewer with a thought. Poetry shows both sides of the scale, with epic and lyrical poetry containing full plot lines and stories often, while haikus and fragmentary poems focus on the writer's intended feelings. Both extremes have narratives, as do works like nonsense verse. I mean, even among the gibberish, there is still something that the author intended. Even if something was made intending to provoke no emotions, to tell absolutely no story, to have no plot whatsoever, well, the neutrality in and of itself is the narrative. It haunts everything, and there is no real escape. Narrative is beholden to its own theory and study. Narrative flow, pacing, act structure, tone, characterization, so on and so forth. These are looped often into the narrative as a whole, being included as another component of the story. Mediums have their own unique theories as well, and while it's easy to cast this purely into the framework, lines often get muddied as stories get abstracted deeper into an art form. I suppose this is a good time to talk about music now. Music's medium and narratives are wholly intertwined, and there's no real consistent rule for what can be used to distinguish the two. Pop music tends to sell the lyrics as the narratives, while the instrumentation is the medium. But see, other genres like jazz and prog rock sell the instrumentation and performance as the narrative directly, having the medium pretty much also be the same as the narrative in these cases. It's almost as if music is a horrendously broad medium due to being unconstrained by existing in a physical space and being able to be produced in legitimately countless of ways. Yeah. But see, here's the beauty of it. Music is inherently warping its medium to fit its narrative. Or maybe it's better to say that music is the warping a sound to fit the composer's intentions. Wait, no, those are exactly the same phrases. Anyway, my point is that music plays with its medium constantly, a trait that we often see taken for granted with other art forms, a trait that is often smushed down to reduce complexity. Yes, that mass-market pastoralist painting of a house is pretty. Yes, that pulp romance novel is steamy. Yes, that blockbusting action movie is exciting. But wouldn't it be even more impactful if they were warped to fit their medium? It's time for video game discussion. So, fun fact, interactivity slams mediums wide open, as the consumer is placed directly into the medium as an active force of, well, the medium. So yay! Most often the player and the gameplay are not addressed by the narrative directly. This doesn't mean that games don't play with their mediums, however. Gameplay is often tuned to fit the feel and tone of a story, often through techniques such as difficulty curves and gameplay mechanics. This stacks with other techniques as well, such as camera perspectives and musical accompaniment, meaning that a skilled game studio can make something that deeply enraptures the player and gets them to make actions that they wouldn't normally make. This in turn can create some majorly impressive narrative work. And when the player's influence is directly addressed by the narrative, well, what better way to immerse the consumer than to cast them as part of the very media that they are consuming? There's layers to this, of course. On one end, it's granting the player an avatar that they can project themselves onto. On the other hand, it is breaking the fourth wall down into pieces and dragging the concept of the player and interactivity into the narrative kicking and screaming. This isn't a new concept, being a variation on metafiction, works that directly acknowledge their nature as a piece of media. Works like Hamlet and the Canterbury Tales are the ancestors of modern works like One Shot and Deltarune. See, self-referential narratives have pretty much always been around. Now, I suppose you're wondering why I'm bringing all of this up, dear audience. Well, let me finally ask you a non-rhetorical question. How do you feel about me? And by me, I mean what you are currently watching on your screen. I mean, isn't it fascinating how I can appear to talk and move around while pretty much all of it is just an illusion created by bright flickering lights? Getting down to it, however, I mean, all of this is crafted for a reason. The light and sound waves that create a relative stage of familiarity, the non-threatening avatar, my delivery. See, the medium is my tool here as well. And maybe, just maybe, I'm trying to make you feel a specific way. Oh, so I can rip it out in the third act. I'm just joking. And with that, I'll consider my own stage set. So until next time, fare thee well.